Welcome to the Mindful Nomad podcast. I'm your host, Miguel Gutierrez. This podcast is an exploration into the world of creatives, community leaders, and entrepreneurs, taking a deep dive into their lives, focusing strongly on lifestyle, spirituality, mental health, and education. So grab a seat, relax, and join me for this exciting journey through conversations with other mindful nomads. This was previously recorded for the podcast Travel Cuts and Consciousness, but I've decided to keep it on a playlist as it still aligns well with the Mindful Nomads podcast. Enjoy. So I'd like to welcome our second guest ever on the new podcast, Travel Cuts and Consciousness. Nadir, Nahdi, founder of online platform BENI. I originally met Nadir in 2014 after just opening my shop on Brick Lane. I cut his hair, but he doesn't remember that, which is kind of funny. Nadir he had been recommended to my shop by a friend, and we chatted about life, his former life as a model and life in London. And fast forward a year, we bumped into each other in Berlin when we were both living there. I just opened my shop, and we've been in touch since, and it's been amazing to watch his platform and message grow online. So I thought he'd be a perfect guest for this show. So yeah, how are you? And do you want to give the listeners a bit of an intro into you and your background?
What an introduction, man. Felt a bit emotional actually just hearing that. Where does the time go, right?
Yeah.
So my name is Nadir. I was born and raised in Wembley. A friend of mine, Izzy, was like, yo, you have to go check out this guy's like barbershop if you want like a really fresh cut. And I traveled literally about 45 minutes from Wembley to the other side of town to Miguel's shop. And like, honestly, I didn't remember that you cut my hair. I think it was such an incredible haircut that it just was deleted from my memory because I've never had such a good haircut like that ever again in my life. No, but then we kind of kept in touch. And what's interesting about Miguel, we kind of connected on that whole content thing, right? You had started your documentaries and you were kind of going around the world making these incredible videos. And I was starting my journey in that whole kind of content world. And we kind of kept in touch, and it's just beautiful to see us grow in like very, very different directions. But yeah, I run BENI. BENI is a kind of a creative platform. The idea behind it is to provide a space for people who felt like they never had one. Growing up as a minority in the UK, there was always a lack of representation for people who might have looked like me or people grown in similar areas than me. And I wanted to provide a space using online platforms to be like, hey, this is who we are in our entirety, a kind of platform that celebrated us in our positivity and didn't use the negative things that people might associate with our community as the only thing to define us. So the tagline of the whole channel is, if you don't define yourself, someone else will. And it was just empowering to create something that allowed me to say who I was instead of mainstream media saying who I am.
It's a pretty strong message. I think I can relate to that as well. Growing up in Liverpool as someone who's half Latin, a little bit of Asian, and there wasn't anyone who looked like me growing up, especially in school. There was no one who was Latin. I've had racist comments so growing up as a child, and people assume I was like full Chinese for some reason, but usually they would derogatory comments in that kind of space. But yeah, it's really interesting to know about your platform and know that that's what it's there to represent, is people like me.
Yeah, 100%. I think like what was interesting is that like people, when you're in that space where you kind of feel like you're very alone and quite isolated, it's so interesting to see how it can resonate with people who their variables and their ingredients might be different, but the feeling is exactly the same. And that was beautiful for me to see. But I felt growing up that there was never a platform that kind of brought us all together, right? You're either like part of the Black community and some of the narratives that come out of there, or the brown Asian community and Turkish community or Somalia or whatever, right? But there was nothing really that kind of brought together these shared sentiments that we all might feel, and be like, yo, this is our problem. How are we coming together to kind of better the situation for everybody? And that's what BENI is kind of an attempt to do that for an emerging generation in London and around the world.
How did you originally get BENI off the ground? What was the first thing you did?
So it was actually initially, so the light bulb moment was actually completely by accident. So I was at the time working for the UN. I was about 23. And then basically the London bombing attacks had happened. And then I had this idea, and like I never made a video before in my life. And I was like, I pitched to my boss. I was like, hey, Pharrell just made a song called Happy. Do you remember the song? 'Cause I'm happy, da da da. And it was going hella viral. And I was like, yo, it'd be incredible if we did our own version, doing like an eclectic representation of what it meant to be a minority, a Muslim minority in London. It would help upend the stereotypes that were happening about this particular community that was being attacked. And then my boss was kind of like, dude, get back to your office, blah, 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 blah. Don't even think about it. So when I got home to London, I was like, screw them. I don't need the support of them. I'll do it myself. Literally all I had on my table was like my camera, a bit of change on my laptop. I sent about 30 emails, got a bunch of responses back from the community that I knew. And over the period of like 10 days, learned how to like shoot video on this DSLR, filmed a really, like, it wasn't anything special, and filmed a video, filmed a parody of Happy. And then I posted it at 7:30 that night, exhausted. I crashed out. And then by the time I woke up in the morning, I had got 1.4 million views on YouTube, and my emails were flooded, messages, my phone had died even though I charged it all night. And it was just like, holy cow, you can make video, can make you connected to a global audience who feel the shared and very similar sentiments and feelings. And that was the light bulb moment for me. And I was like, wow, video is where it's at. And it allows me to connect with people in really intimate and meaningful ways. And that's when I was like, yo, I'm going to start a platform dedicated to making video content that connects with people in that way.
I remember coming across that video. Actually, I think it was Izzy who told me before I met you, maybe. Yeah. And he was like, did you think that the channel would become what it is from that video? Because I think you had a little bit of a gap in the uploads, and you probably were thinking.
I think when I got that viral video, I was like, whoa, what the hell just happened? I kind of thought my life was going to be X. And then that video moment happened, and I was like, wow, maybe this is a segue into something I would rather do. And I think at that point in my life, I was really frustrated that I had no creative outlet. And that was the kind of Hail Mary kind of moment where, like, heavenly light, this is what you could be doing. I didn't know it would end up in BENI, which is why I left my job. And then I ended up working for some other media startups. I was at Vice for a bit. And then working at another media startup in Berlin where we bumped into each other again. And that was me kind of like figuring out, what will my space look like? How will I find my unique voice in this crazy content world? And then it took me about 2 years in that world to kind of like really figure out what BENI would look like. And then I quit my job, and then BENI materialized because I figured I can only make this work if I give this 100% of my focus and energy. You know, sometimes you need like a gun pointed to your head to really like bang out that work. And then I did it, and it was just like, I turned up in my office and I was like, hey, I need to do this thing. Thankfully, they were really supportive. And I went back to London and I just started filming my first video for BENI then.
I read something online in an interview about how you raised the money was it for a camera?
Yeah.
By selling the...
It was really bootleg, man. You know how it is. It's like a hustle. Like first thing I do, I thought I was like, yo, I have to buy a camera. So I basically had this idea for like laptop decals. And this is really important because if you're a young person thinking about starting a creative endeavor, the first thing that should be on your mind is like how you can make this sustainable. And in the beginning, you're not making money through your content, so you have to think of other ways to make that money. Luckily, I had another moment of wow, this could be a good idea. I saw people having those decals, you know, when like Alice is holding the apple, but it's actually the MacBook apple lights up. And I was like, oh, that's really cool how you can integrate the design into a laptop. And then I kind of grew up with geometry, so like within like my culture, geometry plays a big role in that. So I grew up with that, and I was kind of like, wouldn't it be beautiful to kind of embed geometry within the design of a MacBook, and then the light would spill out in the geometry. So then I said to a friend of mine who's a designer, I was like, yo, do you reckon you could make a decal in that way? And she was like, never done it before, let me try. She did it, turned it over in about 10 days. We started selling. We had enough money to buy about 300 stickers. And then they sold out in the first like 5 days. And then we bought 2,000, and then they sold out. And then we bought 5,000, and then they kept getting bigger and bigger. And then I started working with influencer friends. And then eventually I made enough money to buy like my first camera, and then like some equipment. And then the first video came out. And then that led to like the first sponsorship. So it was just like, again, like a consequence of like lots of different coincidences, well, lucky chances, but also hard work.
I mean, it's pretty cool that you used geometry, because obviously it's within your culture and stuff like that you grew up with, because geometry is within everything, and within nature. It's like if you zoom in far enough on a plant, it's geometry.
Exactly.
What's the relevance to that?
You hit the nail on the head. I think like within my culture and my religion, we don't actually depict living things. So like we don't make paintings of humans, for example. So a lot of the art was centered around geometry, and geometry is meant to resemble the beauty of life and the intricacy of it. So geometry in the way that it's done within Islam is like it's very mathematically precise, right? And the symbology behind that is that every line and every stroke has a deeper meaning to the holistic bigger picture, right? You take one line out and the math doesn't work anymore. So you are a symbol of a line or a stroke within the broader picture that is life, right? And everything plays a part in that. It could be like the way that you treat the environment, the way that you treat each other. If this holistic picture isn't whole, then it breaks and it falls apart and the maths isn't an equation anymore. So geometry it basically depicts that. And I think that's really beautiful. And that idea that like every single stroke has a meaningfulness in it, for me, I found very inspirational. And to have that as a reminder on a laptop was a beautiful thing, I think, for young people to be like, hey, this is my culture. It's friggin' cool. MacBooks are cool in terms of the whole design aesthetic. I'm gonna be proud and I'm gonna don it and I'm gonna wear it. And the best thing about it was even when people who aren't within the tradition, they start to see the value in that and then they become consumers of it. And that's what it's about. It's about sharing the beauty of your culture with other people.
I do like what you said there because, you know, that like the universe is built on geometry. And like you say that a lot of people say that the universe is you and you are the universe.
That's
so
me. Yeah, exactly.
Like you say is that, you know, every line, every stroke, exactly. You are meant to be 100%. Here.
And I believe that. I'm less, for example, me personally, what I love about that is that I'm less concerned about what people might think individually. But what the beautiful thing about geometry is that we all end up in the center, right? And I think it doesn't really matter what starting point you start from, as long as we coincide in shared ethics and morals and trying to be the best people we can be on this planet. That's all you can ask for.
It's all about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Which leads me on to my next question is you became like part of the Creators for Change program on YouTube. How was that? What was it about and how has it helped BENI?
So Creators for Change is a program by YouTube to support creators who dedicate their channels for making socially impactful content. And that means content creators and influencers who are taking on the world's toughest problems, poverty, immigration, refugee crisis, wars around the world, and they're trying to use their platforms to raise awareness of them or to help solve the problem at hand. So for me, the program came at the perfect time because I just started my channel. So to have like YouTube approach me and be like, hey, we'd love for you to be on board in this program was a huge privilege because like, I think at that time I'd only had like 20,000 followers. I was really like, I wasn't a big name. Even my Instagram account was really like not big at all. So to have them be like, we think your content is really important and we want to like help you raise that and then support you, well, it meant a lot to me. And it definitely helped me to get from A to B at a time where if I didn't have that, it would have been a lot harder because it introduced me to a community of other creators who are incredible in what they do in very similar and different ways. And also the logistical and organizational support from YouTube itself. Like even till now, they still support me. Like the program continues, and the YouTube team are like family to me. Like I know them really well, and if I have any problems, they support me. And even though my relationship with YouTube in terms of making content is quite inconsistent, if I ever needed help, they're always there at hand, and that's incredible.
Well, I guess it's like your videos are not really something you just make on the fly.
No.
It's kind of like a lot of thought has to go into it.
Yeah, I mean, you understand this more than anyone because yours are a bit more quality orientated as well. But you know what it's like? YouTube is like, the YouTube stereotype is vlogs daily, very lo-fi. There's not much thought that goes into them most of the time. But I like to think that our content is a bit more quality orientated, there's a bit more focus, there's a bit more of a story. That stuff takes time because we're trying to bridge the gap between TV and YouTube. So I wouldn't call myself like a daily or a consistent vlog, like poster. But when I do post, I like to think that it has an impact on people. And I think I can see that in the way that people engage with my content. And that means a lot to me. So like, I kind of feel like in a weird way, if you are someone with a channel, which people listen to, you should deserve their attention. And I kind of feel like I don't want to waste your time with mundane, crappy stuff. If I post, it's going to be like significant enough to deserve the time that you've spent on my channel. That's my philosophy. Maybe not the best thing because I'm not the biggest in the world, but like it's a work in progress.
I think it's what's interesting about you is that you you use stories a lot. So
Yeah.
people do and can interact with you on like
Yeah.
a vlog basis, on a daily basis,
Yeah.
wherever you go and traveling in London. So people find that personal connection to you, which I find is so important. Just
Yeah.
one, for interaction, and two, for getting the message across, and then driving people to watch your videos on
Yeah.
YouTube. So that
Yeah, I mean, like, I love the day-to-day stuff. So actually, I kind of treat my Instagram stories like my vlogs. So like, I'm very like open on my Instagram stories. I literally take you through my day, and I enjoy that because I think there's something in being consistently creative, right? How can you make your day as appealing, even though it might be mundane and nothing? How can you make it appealing in a way that entertains people? And I think that it just keeps your creative juices flowing, and I enjoy that process on Instagram. And the editing is easy, and you can make it happen instantly. But YouTube, of course, takes a bit more effort because there's a bit more quality involved in that. So, but I like to feel that there's a nice balance in that. But the challenge for us content creators is people might like your quality oriented stuff, but ultimately to be sustainable, you have to have scale. And we have to figure out a way of maybe like lowering the quality, not to a zero, but in a way that we can be more consistent as well, that the numbers come in, because that's really crucial if you're going to survive in the game as well. And I'm kind of still flirting and figuring out what that balance looks like.
Well, I know that your content obviously has a strong relation to representing all cultures, and it's quite unique and quite inspiring as well at the same time.
Thanks,
So
man. Likewise.
what would you say your creative workflow is like from start to finish in terms of thought to the end product?
Yeah. I'd love to say that there's a lot of thought in it, but a lot of the time, no, there is. Most of the time, I'll arrive in a situation and the thoughts will come from the experience, right? And I think that there's an authenticity in that. Is that I'm not coming in with an agenda. I'm coming in to an experience, and then that experience teaches me X, and then I conclude that, and I share that with my audience. Other times where, like, for example, the video about my grandmother, which was basically me traveling to Indonesia to learn about the roots of my grandma, which were very ambiguous and very unknown. And it was me discovering and unearthing things that my family had never known. And it turned out to be a really like emotional journey. There was planning in that, because there had to be, because they like had no idea where my grandma was from, and like villages and people and contacts. That video specifically, which is about 23 minutes on YouTube, that took about 2.5 months from beginning to end, 2.5 months, 3 months. So I had an idea, and the workflow was kind of like, what do I know? Literally post-it, like typical like post-its on a wall and strings being like blah, 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 blah. And then a lot of question marks. And then when you're filming, you just have to arrive in a space and hope for the best. And you'll see in the video that there are things happen that I could never have planned for. And that was incredible. And I think sometimes actually that makes the best content, when it's not planned and when it's spontaneous and it's completely crazy.
Funny enough, you already got to one of my questions, which was like, but basically Finding Nenek was one of my favorite pieces of content of yours, and the backstory, and knowing that it even though you're saying it was a 2.5 month journey, it was a 10-year process, and probably even back to childhood, not 100%. Knowing about it. How did you feel once it was over? Because obviously it was such a big part of your life. Did you feel like you could close that chapter, or?
Yeah. So I'd love for people to see it. So like, check it out on my YouTube channel. So I probably will spoil it in the next minute, but like, just to let people know that within that video, I basically find a house that belongs to my family, which my grandmother had fled because her family were killed by the Dutch, the colonial Dutch. They'd come and killed the whole family. And my grandma was part of like basically a royal Indonesian family. And the Dutch were coming to basically like upend the power structure. So they killed all of the kind of middle upper class Indonesians, or put them into slavery. So my grandma was part of that. So her brothers had been all killed, and then and basically she fled, and she ended up in Kenya. So that's how she met my dad, in Kenya. When I go back to Indonesia about years later, I find the house that she actually had born and raised in, and I find a picture of her in that house. That was the story. It was an end in some sense, because it answered the question of where was my grandmother from, but it also opened up a lot more questions of why did she leave? What were the circumstances of her leaving? And that is a story I'd love to pick up at some point. And I think there would be a sequel, in which I'm trying to plan for later on at the end of this year, called Following Nenek. So I would follow her journey to Kenya and try and learn more about what was it like for an Indonesian girl in the east of Africa turning up, arriving in this alien content and not knowing like anyone,
alone,
and with a suitcase of all that she could take with her. And for me, that I think would be an equally compelling story, because it's basically restarting your life. And as a result of her sacrifice, I am where I am today. So I'd love to continue that story for sure.
Yeah, I think one thing, you know, as well as that, is that I find it so interesting in your YouTube content, how you really connect with people. How important is it, do you think, to connect with people on a personal level who you go to film and document?
I think that's the most important. You know more than anyone, like the content that you get on screen is only going to be as good as a relationship you build off, right? And like really, filming starts from the moment you meet someone, because you're cultivating an environment in which they decide how comfortable they feel to share certain things with you. And like, it's funny because like a lot of my followers like will message me asking like, what camera do you use? What lens do you use? And those are always the first questions. And I'm kind of like, forget that, technicalities come later. My most viewed video I filmed with like literally a potato, right? It doesn't matter. But what they don't ask me is that, how do you cultivate relationships? Like what you just asked me. Very few people ask me, how do you cultivate deep relationships with people that they share so much with you? That's more interesting. And I always tell people, look, invest in your social skills, not your technical skills. What does that look like? That looks like, I like to think that I'm a very social person. I'm very comfortable in social environments. And for me, it's because I put myself in situations where I feel very uncomfortable that I practice and I train. I'm learning, like, how do I come across in my physicality to be an open person, or someone can feel very relaxed with. And that takes a lot of work. But as a result of that, you can cultivate incredible relationships with people that they can share with you, or they'll remember you when you need them. Or if I think of all the successes in my life, they've always been a result of someone else, and that's because of the relationships I built in my life. And it's the most important thing, and I think everything else comes as after that ability to like really establish incredible relationships with people around you.
I think I can relate to that definitely, in terms of like traveling and documenting barbers, and especially like around Asia. And I'd go into barbershops and talk to people, and they'd be like, well, who's this guy? But then when I said I was a barber, they would relate to me in that sense. Exactly. And then I'd show them a video and they're like, oh. Yeah. And then you spend the 2-3 days with them, and then they become like good friends. Even though you can't even communicate in some ways, you know, you have the same thing in common. You know what I mean? Like you're just a human being. But
like, do you find it like, I mean, you've traveled a lot. Do you find it different? Do you behave differently in different cultures? Is there like an awareness of like the cultural sensitivity as soon as you arrive?
I try to grasp like a little bit and like understand a little bit about the culture before I go somewhere. Like we went to my friend's house in like the Kurdish mountains close to Iran, and it was like a totally new thing for me in like this tiny village, no tourists. We had to go through like 8 military checkpoints to get there. And it was a whole like learning curve in terms of like, how do you walk in? Do you take your shoes off? Well, how do you know what I mean? Do you leave the room when they're praying? Like, how do you know it's Ramadan? Am I gonna not eat as well? You know, so we were not eating during the day with them as well. We were drinking water.
Exactly.
But we were doing nothing in front of them. So it's just trying to gauge how you can, you know, connect with people and have them respect you as much as you respect them.
But it's that kind of cultural, I call it cultural mobility, right? It's that flexibility to be able to arrive in a culture and country that's very different to yours and understand the nuance that's happening on the ground. And like, interestingly enough, like, trust me, not many people can do that. And that's why I think it's one of the biggest skills of the future. People who could like, are globalized mindsets, where they can arrive anywhere in the world and are able to understand what's happening and like behave accordingly. Like, I used to work in an old workplace where, for example, they would have sales meetings and they would have like some snacks on there, and they'd have like a bunch of snacks and blah, blah, blah. And then the investors come in that they were trying to pitch to, and they were like these Arab Middle Eastern investors, but on the table were a bunch of like pork rinds and like pork sausages. And that is a lack of cultural mobility. It's the ability to understand that actually these people this is not what they do, that it almost becomes an insensitivity, right? If you're smart about it, you would have known that actually these people don't do that. If we do want to like make them feel welcome, we should have a bit of awareness about their nuances and their little behaviors and specific personality traits that makes people feel like, oh, this person's making an effort to actually know who I am. And that makes such a huge difference in that relationship building.
think it's slowly the world's becoming a smaller place with social media and stuff like that. So people are kind of getting it a little bit more. But there's some people who never get it because they're not going to ever go anywhere else.
But like for example, like a channel like yours is like super interesting for me because like what I saw you were doing is that you were traveling all over the world, but what combined all these different cultures was a love of being a barber. And like that is a universal language. So like actually why I find your content really interesting is because I can resonate. I mean, I'm not like a specialist barber or anything. I don't really like, I'm not part of that culture. But what I do get is how a medium can connect with people regardless of where they're from, right? And for me, it might be storytelling or like another conduit or another medium. But I'm able to relate to what you do because I see that you've picked up on that conduit, a medium of your own, and able to make that relatable to people of different cultures. And that's beautiful. That's the future. It's like finding the unique points in which we all connect and being like, how can we share skills and stories using that medium? And that's what defeats the world of ignorance and racism and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And all working on a similar level to each other, you know what I mean? No judgment. And I think that's why when I go to India and I go to film in the shop and they're like, why do you want to film in my shop? Like, it's a poor shop. I'm like, I find it beautiful. Yeah, exactly. It's an amazing shop. But they kind of see us as a tourist who has money and we're a different class. And it's like, do you know what I mean? It's like, we don't work like that. I don't work like that. Yeah. So we're here on the same level. But
like also like what you do is like a celebration of that, right? It's understanding like even like super trendy barber places today are an evolution of these traditional places, really, right? Like some of the cuts and some of the techniques and everything have come from these traditional places. So we have to celebrate that. Otherwise, it just becomes like we've ignored it. When actually some of the best places in the world, I'm sure you know more than anything, are in these shops and shabby places in like the middle of like an Indian market somewhere. So it's just a great appreciation of barber culture, and I love it.
So far, working as a content creator on YouTube, what would you say has been the toughest aspects?
Toughest aspect is probably time away from my family. It's a great opportunity to travel around the world, but I realize that it's taking me away from the people I love the most. And like, that's tough. And like trying to find the work-life balance to be able to be home more and be present. Because like when you're working with online tools and platforms, you're always on. You're always getting notifications. There's always things to do. There's always people messaging you. And especially when you work in like a global kind of markets, people are always awake, right? So you're never really off. So I've been like it's been really difficult to be present. And then what I mean by that is like totally like when I'm sitting with my family to actually be there. And that's been a struggle. And over the last couple of years, I think I've got better. But I've really, it's really tough. It's really tough to learn just to kind of like enjoy being in your own space, like without being distracted. And I'd be lying to you to say if I figured it out. But it's a work in progress. And what I mean by that is just be able to sit with myself, not be on any technology, and be fully present with the people around me that love me, not even just family, but also my very close friends who I probably haven't given the time that they probably deserve.
It is difficult, especially when you are online all the time. Like I had a little bit of a break from Instagram. I deleted the app.
No way.
And it felt so nice.
You can imagine. And I've been thinking about that recently as well. But like, it's just so funny because like, I think a lot of my friends, like they as a result, this life is very unique and like it's very, at times unrelatable. Like I travel the world. I feel like I have multiple homes around the world and I'm very fortunate and blessed. And I hate to be complaining about it because I sound like a spoiled brat. But the difficulty is that you cultivate such incredible relationships with people around the world is that when you leave said place, that it's very difficult to maintain those relationships in that place at the same time because you want to be fully present in the one that you've just arrived in. So what I feel right now, I feel like I've been spread. I've been torn in pieces where like people I love are all over the place. And it's very hard to maintain those deep relationships with people. It's funny because like I work in communications, right? Technically. But some of the most difficult thing for me to do with my interpersonal relationships is to maintain the communications with them. So I'm learning to be better in that.
It wears you a bit thin. Like I've lived in different places and like you feel like you have a tribe in each place. And
exactly.
It's hard to like you say, it's hard to maintain that because, you know, you might have family in KL or friends in Jakarta.
Exactly.
to try and maintain that on different time zones as well as being back home, as well as having to work, as well as having to film stuff and whatever else, and try and have a relationship. If you have a relationship, it's it's tiring, exhausting.
I mean, relationships are probably like an even more intense difficulty, because to have them in that environment is very difficult. But it's a work in progress. We're also the first generation of content creators, so no one really knows like what the hell we're doing or like the impact it has on the people around us. So like, some of my friends now who are like influencers and content creators are having children and stuff now, and they have no idea how it's going to impact their family in the future and stuff like that. And but don't get me wrong, social media life has lots of incredible things about it. The fact that I have a global family as a result of my social media, but it can come with lots of negativities at the same time.
What advice would you give to someone who's thinking about going into like the travel content creator world? Yeah. In terms of what you've known, what you've learned so far?
Yeah, I feel like to someone thinking about starting like travel oriented content, I really think you have to be really smart about how you approach it. You know, I didn't come from like a family of like means, or like a family with the kind of investment in which they could allow me to just like travel and not think about money back at home. So for me, the focus was like, how do I get smart about this, in which I'm making money, which could maybe invest in my initial content that I can put out, and then start getting brands involved in. And that for me was my stickers. So I would encourage people to actually first think of a good idea to support yourself, because the first 6 months are going to be grim. And then comes the idea, right? What differentiates you from other people? So for me, I like to think it's like, it's the storytelling and the message of diaspora third culture. For you, it's how barbermanship, is it barbermanship? Barbering, how barbering connects people of different cultures. And that's a unique message, that you were the first one in the world to do that. And that was your unique spin. And that's really important for people to find, is like, what unique element are you bringing into the space around travel? And why should I listen to your voice instead of all of the thousands that are out there? And then third, I would advise it's community. Community is everything, right? Like, and this is where the social skill comes in, because trust me, it doesn't matter how good your content is, you're not going to grow unless people are pushing your content simultaneously. And I've only grown because I have such a great community of people around me who support me and who are willing to retweet and reshare and push me on their platforms as well. So really invest a lot in those relationships. Like literally, I socialize a lot, but not for the sake of socializing, because maintaining these relationships is, one, it gives you inspiration for ideas, but two, these people are going to be your backbone. They're going to support you at times when you need it, and that's priceless as well.
What do you kind of focus on in terms of 1, 2, 3, 4 in terms of like social media platforms? Is it YouTube first, Instagram second?
I actually think Instagram is my favorite platform because it's instant, right? Like, and I love the curation of like imagery. Like I love the aesthetics of photos, and the stories, and the stories is good fun because I love messing around and like and making a fool of myself. So I have a balance in which my photos are really like aesthetically inclined, but my stories are really like interpersonal and funny and messing around.
Trolling,
yeah, because I don't like to take myself too seriously. But if you just see my grid, you think, oh, like, this guy thinks he's blah 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 blah. If you see my stories, I'm just like farting around and messing around all the time, and I love that because that's what people connect with. So Instagram, YouTube second. They're my main ones, to be honest. I'm not on Twitter because I just don't understand it. It's like the Matrix to me. The third one would probably have to be Facebook, but even then I'm really bad on Facebook as well. But Instagram and YouTube are the best ones in my opinion.
Do you use just a personal page on that, or you have an actual?
I have a BENI one, on Facebook.
Oh, BENI, yeah.
I have a BENI one, and then my family one. But problem is like, I was reading this really interesting article in the New York Times, and it was basically saying the death of a social media platform is when parents start using it. And Facebook, literally my whole family, the elder generation was on it, which is why young people aren't on it. Like you look at the engagement rates, like especially in Europe, in the Western world, young people are on Snapchat, they're on Instagram, and that's where I want to be because I want to connect with them.
What did parents start using MySpace? Is that why that died?
Yeah, that's a good point. I actually have no idea why that placed. I never even had a MySpace account.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Not because I was like too young, just because I don't know why. It was more for like musical people and blah blah blah.
It was a bit
just never had one.
complicated. You used to have to put like a HTML code
Yeah,
and like
yeah,
design your
exactly.
page, and you have a song on
Yeah.
there. It was super emo.
I was on MSN a lot.
MSN Messenger.
Yeah, yeah.
What song? Did you
Yeah,
have
exactly.
as the status?
I was a proper emotional kid, so usually it was like a heartbreak song.
Little B2K.
Yeah. Because I was a girl who broke my heart at the time, and I tried like log out and log in so she'd see my status update.
I used to.
We
so
all did it.
funny.
We all did it.
Yeah. That's so good. It, like brings back memories.
Yeah, proper. I like, of course, man, like 50 modem thing, whatever it's called, when the internet used to go.
And like someone would phone and like you'd be like, and then the phone would go off, or someone would pick up the phone downstairs and the internet goes
I
off.
know,
You're
the
like,
worst thing ever. I know, yeah, it's like 99% downloaded. That one song that took like frigging like a whole day to download.
LimeWire.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the serious stuff. Your Eid Mubarak video was really heartfelt. Like I really enjoyed that. As someone who's not, I'm not Muslim. How important is religion or spirituality to you as a person, and how do you think it, has, what part does it play in your life?
I think it plays a massive part in my life. Does it play a massive part in my online life? Probably less. I think spirituality is a very interesting thing for me because it's such a polarizing thing, religion and spirituality, especially in the online world. Everyone has an opinion of what's right and wrong. And in my private life, it plays a huge role. It was the kind of core of my family and what brought us together. And I think I made a conceited decision not to bring it into my online world because I wanted to protect it. Because as soon as you start to project your reality, your spiritual reality or your religious reality, people start to feel like they can take picks at it and say that this isn't right. This isn't the right way to do things. And my family were never raised like that. This is how we felt and this is what we did because we felt it was the right thing to do and that was good enough. And I want to protect that. And I think I find myself at times conflicted because it is a big part of my life and I'd love to share that with people because there are a lot of beautiful things about my family and the way that we practice. It's super multicultural, it's diverse, and spirituality is at the core of what brings all of those people together. And sometimes I think maybe I should share that and the world deserves to see that. But then I'm also worried because I know how much of a dark and reactionary place the internet can be. And it would hurt me personally if people started taking negative jabs about something that means a lot to me in that way.
I think I got a little bit of a backlash is when I first uploaded my first political kind of videos when I went and filmed a couple of the people who were cutting hair in the Calais jungle. And even though I didn't put an opinion on it, my scope for that was my dad came through Calais as a political refugee. So he said he would have loved a haircut when he was on the way. Yeah. So I went over to the Calais jungle and kind of documented what the lives were like there. And just the comments, it was good because it got a reaction. But then I realized this platform is maybe not the place to have something like that because there was people who were a lot of racist stuff. Yeah, I had to block a lot of keywords off YouTube. Yeah, and then a lot of people were really positive about it. Yeah, and then I was like, all right, I'm not gonna do anything too political now.
That's crazy. For me, politics is interesting because it's a very different dynamic to spirituality, right? So politics, we're all subject to, and something like that, it just really brings to the surface how rotten and our society can be. And for me, for you to do that, I think is really powerful and necessary. Because there's a difference between me sharing a spiritual moment at home or you sharing what you politically feel or morally feel to be the right thing to do at that moment. You haven't made a political statement. These are people suffering. Anyone can see that. And for you to go and do that, I think was a really beautiful thing. It's a humane thing. And it must be really disheartening to see how much negativity around it. But as it comes with the game, it's really interesting because we pick up on the negativity more than we do the positivity because it hurts us more, right? You're affected by it. But I guarantee more people were positively affected by your content in the Calais jungle than those who were negatively impacted by it because they're louder. Small dogs bark the loudest.
They all left the channel anyway.
Good. You don't want them there anyway, right? Yeah,
no,
exactly.
It's so true.
Yeah.
It was funny. People are just they should be on Vice. Or, so, okay. But it was interesting to see that's what, people thought that way about certain
Yeah.
things and where the channel should go. Like I'm still interested in like doing
Yeah.
stuff like that. Maybe not so to one side.
Well, the question is like, do you want to start making content for people who agree with you,
Yeah.
or do you want to make content for people who might disagree with you? Because think about people who are just on the tip of the bench and just need a little nudge to start thinking about things in a very different way. That could be powerful, but at the same time, it's very disheartening to have very vitriolic and negative comments about things that you might feel very passionate about.
I'm guessing you've got a lot of stupid comments on your channel as well.
Yeah, I think interestingly, like less now, because what I've been very careful about, like, I actually think like I use my platform, my online platform, like my house. I see it as my digital house, right? And if you're gonna come into my house, my real house or my digital house, and you're gonna kick up a fuss, then I have the right to kick you out. So I have no qualms with like someone coming and being abusive or like blocking you. See you later. So to be honest with you, I think I've blocked so many people that my space is actually really chill. Just spat on the mic. I'm so sorry. But like, it's really chill, and everyone's like really nice and supportive, and I'm very lucky. Like it's crazy. The whole creative process is insane. Like I was speaking to a friend the other day, is that you just have to put work out there. People will support you. It's mad. Like sometimes I feel like a fraud, like an imposter syndrome in this space, because like people follow you willingly and are interested in your life, and I'm kind of like, why? But it just goes to show that if you're brave enough to put something out there, there's amazing people out there in the world who are happy to like support you.
True. But what about in like aside from creating, what do you like to do with your spare time in like terms of hobbies?
Yeah, man. Like I think hobbies keep me sane. I think I'm very focused on having a healthy work-life balance, and I think socializing is a big part of that. Catching up with friends, but also like sports is a big part of my life. I love my football, my tennis, and like running as well. So I tend to like genuinely try and keep as fit as possible. That helps with the stress management, because this is a high stress environment, especially with like your self-esteem and like and insecurities are heightened because it's you all the time. So what really helps me with that is my fitness and like running and having a platform to kind of physically just like drain myself of that pent up anxiety. When I don't do that, I see an added increase in my stress levels. Like I get very agitated, I'm very irritated, and my patience is probably less. And that's why it's really crucial. It's crucial for me to have those hobbies.
I think that I know a lot of people who work online who do suffer with mental health.
Yeah, for sure.
Like anxiety, like depression at times, and it is kind of overwhelming to work in that space and put yourself out there. Like a lot of yourself is out there for people to see.
Yeah,
and people do feel like they know you. You know what I mean? And they've taken a little bit of you away with them too.
That's 100%. Sorry to interrupt, but like I was saying this to a friend the other day. They were asking me, "Do you post everything on your Instagram?" I'm like, no. In a weird way, it doesn't feel like it's my Instagram anymore.
It's like a character.
Yeah. And like, I'm always thinking, how would this be seen? Yeah, what was really weird was then when like, when I started growing on my Instagram, and then, you know, the random people I didn't know started following me, and then random people started commenting on my pictures. That's when I realized, whoa, like this is a public space. I don't know these people, but they're talking about me in my comment section, saying something about me, right? It might be positive or it might be negative, it doesn't matter. But like, I'm a third person to this conversation about me. And that was trippy. And it still weirds me out when people like talk about me, knowing that I'll probably see it. Or I think the issue is that they don't think I'll see it, but you do.
But it's in your comments.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like I have issues with anxiety, like especially first thing in the morning. It's like, whoa, it's like being thrown back into a world where there's just so much to do, like business. I've got the shops, I've got the channel.
What do you do to deal with that?
The gym, yoga. I try and maintain meditation, but I'm not consistent with it. Things like I take like ashwagandha and CBD oil.
Nice.
I try and delve and like learn a little bit more about like the spiritual side of life, like a bit of shamanic rituals, a bit of the Hindu culture, Buddhist. So there's all these things I'm always open to doing retreats and, just trying to get away from normal life. I think having the businesses and having a YouTube channel that did so well like a few years ago, it drained a lot of me. But I'm kind of ready to get back into that place. But I know that I need to have a little bit of strength behind me to do it, because I'm not the type of person to, even though I want to vlog and stuff like that, I'm not the type of person who has the confidence to do so, like pick up a camera and walk through a street.
Do you feel like you're stronger than you were when you started your initial channel than now?
I feel like mentally, no. In some ways, mentally, yes. In some ways, no. Because when I first started the channel, I had no fear. I'd never done it before. Like the first interview we ever went to, I was like,
right.
It was like today, like I've started these podcasts today. Yeah. It's a completely new thing for me. But I'm definitely, if I was doing this 6 years ago, I'd be like, no.
Yeah, but what's different? I think it's like now you're burdened by expectation, right? So now you're not the new kid that has nothing to lose. Now people have an expectation of you, right? And that is, for me, a lot of the root of my anxiety. Like I was always that kid with lots of potential, really smart. Like he had, really outgoing. People used to say he's going to do great things, and that expectation really
it's carried on.
Weighed on me, yeah. Because like one, you want to fulfill that expectation, but then you realize that sometimes that you are, you're worried about failing, what people might think of you as a result of that. And ultimately you're worried about destroying that perfect image that people have of you, because you do love that people think of you in that positive way. So when I left my job to start a YouTube channel, which at that time was kind of like, what? A lot of people, they were nice to me and supported me, but they probably thought at the back of their eyes, I could see that they were thinking this was a shit idea, right? So a lot of the stress for me was being like, I need to justify why I'm doing this to people who are from very traditional industries, right? A lot of my anxiety was like, I'm going to prove them wrong. The decision I made was a right one. And I think when newspaper articles and online articles started coming out, they started to be like, oh, okay, he's onto something here. But even now, I'm still feeling like I haven't quite made it in the way that I imagined I want to. So it definitely does, especially also time, dude. I mean, we're not as young as we were a few years ago, right? So you start to realize that you're in a very a space that is very young, and you have a lifespan in it, and you have a certain amount of time to fulfill certain the And I always feel like the one race I can't win is time, and that's killing the anxiety. But like I said, as long as you have conducive means to vent out that anxiety, and that really helps. Getting back into exercise these last 2 years for me has literally saved my life. It's been such a positive thing for me to regain my discipline, but also space of mind to start really just thinking about things very differently.
It's when I maybe it was 3.5 years ago, I got super depressed. First thing that people were saying, go to doctors, get an antidepressants, and I did. I went and did it. Helped me. Did amazing things. And then people would say to me, oh, just do just do yoga and do exercise. When you're depressed, it's the last thing you're thinking about. But now it's a long time ago since I took any drugs for that. I definitely have learned how to balance things out by doing exercise, meditation and yoga, learning about me a little bit more, and kind of balancing things out. I'm not perfectly stable, you know what I mean? I am stable as a person, I'm not crazy, but being able to talk and communicate things as well, being honest and open with people around me, and
sure.
But then trying to stay away from the medicinal easy way out, sure. You know what I mean? Which is it's not for everyone what I'm doing, but it works for me.
Yeah, so. And I think it's important just to kind of find that. But men in particular have a problem with this, and I think the more we kind of speak openly about it, encourages others to do so. It takes time to get to that place, and the right people in your life to be able to feel comfortable enough to share it. But everyone is suffering in some sort of way. We all suffer from the same anxieties and insecurities. It might differ in detail, but ultimately, social media is a narcissistic space. It is, right? And a large part of the reason that I even started my channel, even though it's rooted in social good, was that I wanted to see the fruits of my own work, right? It was about me seeing my contribution and how it can affect people. There is a narcissism in that, right? And for me, that wasn't an issue. For me, I accept that, And for me, it's about learning how can I funnel my narcissism into meaningful things, right? Because I think everyone is narcissistic in a certain way. But when you are putting yourself, when you are the product and people start to have like opinions about you or what you might be doing is right and wrong, it can like exacerbate these issues and they become even more intense, right? And it's really important for people in that space to find avenues in which they can release pent-up anxieties and insecurities, but also avenues to talk about it. And especially men, because men have, you know, like pride and bravado, and the more men that come out and openly talk about some of the issues that they've been going through, the more that will feel comfortable to do so, especially young people. And I do feel like it's becoming part of the conversation. Like everyone's talking about vulnerability now.
I think from the like younger people especially, because you know the traditional man is changing. You know what I mean? Exactly. People are definitely more open. Like even you know kids growing up with the you know a lot more open with the LGBT community. Everything is kind of normalizing it around most like cultural differences as well. So people are definitely becoming a lot more open and talking about things.
You know what's really interesting about the barber shop? For me, it always represented like a communal space in which men would come and...
We're counselors.
Yeah. And like they would unwind, right? And like if you think that's what I associate with a barber shop. I don't know, from my opinion, maybe it's become less that. Like, especially as it grew to be like a proper culture, it's become more about like the techniques and the equipment. But like you go to like the most grimiest, I mean, you know more than anyone, you go to like, especially the American barbershops, like those dudes powwow and they're having like moments where they're talking about their relationships and their wives and their children.
It's like that in like a lot of barbershops. I mean, especially people who've probably been barbering back 5 years and before. Like I was talking to Kem about this, is that it works both ways as well. We get to talk to the clients and we get to communicate our issues and feelings, and it works both ways. But it is a place where we know the deepest, darkest secrets of our clients. They become family. You know, we know everything about them, their affairs, the when they're going to propose, you know, they're about to come out to the parents, whatever it is.
I mean, socially, that's such a powerful thing.
And
like, what's the cause of that? Like barbering. And that's mad. Like people think it's like just a thing you go every couple of weeks or whatever, but like no, it's socially has such a huge role in the health of society. And maybe like people should start seeing it as that. Like I genuinely think government should be investing in more barbershop.
I think there are a few people in our space who are doing this. They're training barbers to be able to talk and counsel people.
Genius.
Which I think is so positive.
So smart.
Be like before you started the channel and BENI and everything like that, what do you wish you would have known if you could go back now? What you wish you would have known before?
I tell you, like a conversation I've been having with myself is, I wish I had a couple more years. I wish I did it a couple of years earlier. And I've been wrestling with this question because a couple of years would have given me more time in my 20s. But those couple of years, I was doing experiences that have allowed me to bring a unique voice to the table. So it's a weird kind of conflict of what I would have preferred. What I would have liked to have known back in those days is that you might think you know where this is going, but you have no idea where it will end up. And I think it's just to be very flexible in your trajectory and allow incredible opportunities to happen around you. Because you might succeed in ways that you never imagined. Another thing I wish I knew back then was I wish I was more disciplined about certain things, because I think if I had set strong foundations of discipline in the beginning, it would have helped me along the way. And that's it. Otherwise, apart from that, I've just, you know what, my life has been amazing. Even the negatives, I've learned incredible things from them. And I make a point to really learn from places or situations where I felt like I could have done better. And I embrace that. And apart from those two things, nothing really. I wouldn't change anything.
Do you have like an exit plan with BENI, or do you plan to take a step back and let other people take over? Or?
Yeah, so like actually, so by the end of the year, I want a team. So like the team, I want to turn it into, so BENI right now is three things. It's content, which I work with brands and we make like kind of cool content around the world about misrepresentation and diaspora and third culture and identity. The second thing is products. So I am starting this thing called like the Future Heritage Lab. And basically it goes to like third culture kids who have grown up with multiple identities and cultures at home. And it basically, we create products from their heritage to make them cool and relevant today. So like, for example, I went to Uzbekistan, which was incredible. And I went with an Australian girl who's Uzbek, and she basically grew up wearing this hat, but was embarrassed wearing it when she was a kid. And then she grew up and was like, actually, you know, what is this hat? And then she goes back to Uzbekistan. And the more she learns about this hat, the more she learns about her identity as an Uzbek girl. So we made a story about that. And then the hat, the consumer can be part of that journey by buying the hat, and the money goes back into the communities that made the hat. So that's products. And then the third thing is events. So hosting events. I mean, I speak at events, but also hosting events that help foster an environment where people can have vulnerable and open conversations about identity and diaspora and the challenges that might come with that. But I'm very interested about how this generation of ours is creating a culture for the future. Not one that's rooted in the trauma of today, but one that's building for a better world that we're all part of. And that's where all of those three things, my content, my product, and my events, all of them channel into that. So by the end of the year, I want a team to help facilitate that. I have people helping me out with the products already, but I would love like a content team, and I'd love people kind of managing regular events around the world, which are kind of BENI events that will like help do the things that I said before. So yeah.
It's really cool. I know like how much family has been such a big part of your life and a big positive impact on. And I've noticed a lot on your Instagram and stuff like that, how like your mum is quite a big part of the community as well.
Yeah.
And how she brought a lot of people together. Your dad, sorry.
Yeah. Both of them. I mean, like they've come part of a team, even though they never work like a team. My parents are characters. They are wild and crazy, and they're clowns. Very different. My dad is very like happy-go-lucky. He's very lovey. He's very like chill. He's a clown, total clown. He's a big adult baby. My mother is a bit more of a disciplinarian. She can be quite sharp, but she's like a proper street girl, London street girl. And the dynamic between them two is hilarious. And I capitalize that on my Instagram a lot because it's just so funny. But my parents did one thing incredibly well, which I'm so grateful for, and that was build a home in which like people from any background felt welcome, and people use our house as a home. They use it as a meeting place. When people have problems, they come to my parents, and even my own friends go to my parents' house when I'm not there, and they use it to speak to adults who they feel can resonate with them on maybe a deeper level, socially, psychologically, even spiritually. And it used to, I think when I was younger, I didn't realize the significance of that. But I've grown older and realized how much of a unique blessing it is to have parents who allow that to happen. You just have to see my family, like we're so multicultural, and like even the people that come into our house are from different religions and different ethnicities and are from different countries. And that has such a major impact on my outlook on life. And like my life makes sense when you see the context of my house. Like I am a globally orientated person because my family literally built that world for me at home. And as a result of that, like, you know, I've been able to see people deeper than the superficial. It was never about where you're from or what you look like. It was always about who you are inside. And that started at home. And those lessons have stuck with me.
What is the actual breakdown of the mix of your heritage, of what you know?
Yeah. So I'm Yemeni, Indonesian, Kenyan, Pakistani. So very mixed. So growing up, it was a melting pot of all of those cultures at home. But even within my extended family, there's even more things. There's like Spanish, Turkish, English, Caribbean, Syrian, everything. So literally the whole family is like a United Colors of Benetton advert. Like, and it's great, and I love that. And like I said, like it means very little. Like the fact that you came from a different culture was not a problem for my family. It was a value added to our family. Like people bring in their beauty in a different way, and that was always like incredible to witness. Like I think I'm attracted to people who are different from me as a result of that background. Like I love difference of culture. I think it's beautiful, and I hope that continues in our family for sure.
Are there any places around the world that you haven't been to that you'd like to go to and maybe do videos about or represent?
Yeah. Oh man, so many. Iran is a bit problematic because like my American visa and all that kind of stuff. And my American visa took me 7 years to get because I kept getting blacklisted. Because I've been to Yemen, I've been to Syria, I've been to all these places. So I've just got my American visa, and I'm kind of like, oh man, if I go to Iran, I won't be able to go back to America. India, I can't go because I'm Pakistani heritage, and then it's quite difficult for single males to get into India if you have Pakistani heritage. Japan is on top of my list. Bhutan is on top of my list. Korea, so many places. You know what the worst thing about traveling is? The worst thing about traveling is it's so contagious. Like, you travel and you realize how little you know. It's such a humbling process. And then you just want to see more and more because of how small and ignorant you feel. And there's always another country to go to. Like, you spend your whole life and you're not seeing anything. Indonesia, 1,000 islands. I'm from there, you know, like, and I've seen 15% of it. You know, it's crazy.
I think I'm the same. I like it. There's so many places just added on the list constantly, and I always end up going back to similar places for a holiday because it's familiar.
That's interesting. Yeah. So what I find myself doing the same.
Yeah.
Like it gets to a point where it's quite exhausting coming somewhere new and trying to learn, but going somewhere where you're familiar with
for a holiday.
Yeah, there's something beautiful in that. Friends, people, you know the cafes, you know the joints. And I'm starting to find that as I get older, I'm starting to appreciate that more. Like, I'm going to the same places again and again. And I think it's just because you want to set roots, right? Like, this nomadic lifestyle has its incredible benefits, but then it does get tiring. But when you go somewhere familiar where you might know a bit of the language, or you know where the amazing restaurants and people and food are, it just has an added enjoyment in it, I think.
Or even, you can just put your bags down and just relax.
Yeah, for sure.
There's I like going to Thailand. If I just wanted to just have a holiday, just go and chill. I know where I can go do yoga, go and eat a good meal here. And that's me. I'm happy with that. Get away from because on the other hand, I love going on the train through India and living this crazy life. You know what I mean? So it's the two completely different contrasts.
Yeah, but it's like a marathon, right?
Yeah,
it's exhausting. Just to be present in these places, just to leave the house, it's whoa, because you have to make decisions everywhere. But sometimes when you just kind of know, want to go yoga in the same place, breakfast at the same place. Yeah, it's relaxing. It's a different nice. Yeah, I get that. We're so first world problems. We're just people are thinking, these assholes, oh my God, I'm so sorry for you guys. You have to travel around the world living this incredible life. But it is exhausting.
You kind of touched on it before about the what your plans are for the next year. But what is your kind of personal goals in life before we get older? And
my mum hopes it's me getting married, which is
I'll see that
not on the horizon anytime soon, to be honest. Just kind of I'm in a weird place with my career where I really want to see that through. So I think allowing someone else into that chaos is a bit irresponsible, because I wouldn't be able to prioritize someone else in what feels like a very chaotic world for me right now. God knows, you meet the right person, and you make it happen. So a partner maybe in the next few years, because I'm getting on a bit. But
how old are you now?
29. You know, how old are you, Cam? 31. Shut it. Shit, how old are you? You're the youngest here, right?
28.
Winning.
So 22.
Is he 22? Oh shit.
I'm 32.
Oh yeah. You're 30. Yeah, I knew that.
Oh, cheers, bro.
The wisdom. But yeah, so I kind of feel like you still with the same girlfriend?
No, we split up.
Oh, okay, so you're single.
We're doing long distance thing for a while, and then I'm single. I'm in the same.
Congrats.
Everyone's
yeah, I feel
you're gonna get
So yeah, maybe a partner.
It would complicate things though. This is the issue. Like you say, it would be irresponsible to bring someone in.
Yeah.
I mean, not like I'm fighting them off, but it's it would complicate life a whole lot.
100%. It's not complicated. I think complicated maybe is the wrong word, because it has a negative connotation.
Yeah.
What it is that when your life is so intense, and like you just said, your life is so difficult that it gives you anxiety, having someone else's happiness be part of that thought process. Because we both know, I guess we all know, what husbands or partners or boyfriends we expect ourselves to be. That it takes compromise and it takes sacrifice. But if you don't have the context to be able to give that to someone, then you're treating them less than they deserve. And I know I don't want to treat anyone in that way, because I know I have expectations of me of what partner I expect myself to be. And if I can't be that person, then I shouldn't get in that context. And I think that's the responsible thing to do. So until I feel like I'm in a better place to give someone my everything, then I'll just be very careful about what I get involved in, because I think that person might end up getting either hurt or not feel the things that I want them to feel. But in terms of other things that are goals of mine in the future, I really want to see this business through. Like, I set an objective for it to get to a certain place, and I'd love to see BENI encompass more people than just myself. So to have a team of thriving people and to kind of like be mentors to other content creators who are making meaningful things, that would mean a lot to me. If I could have like, 3 people that I really like help grow and they become like really successful in their own way, that would mean a lot to me. And I think actually buying my first property, my own property, that would mean a lot to me.
In London?
The dream.
Good luck.
Yeah, exactly. But like the reality of that happening is very slim. But who knows? You gotta pray, right? You gotta aim higher.
Is there anything you think I should have asked and haven't?
Nah, I think it was really interesting. I think. What do you think of my dyed hair?
That looks good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is free hair consultation.
I feel like I've seen it too much already. You know what I mean? It's not like a new thing for me because I'm following you on Instagram.
So I'm not. Some of you might be wondering, I'm not a natural blonde. This is bleached. But since
You
Miguel,
can't tell.
Since Miguel was one of my best haircuts, his advice means a lot to me.
Yeah, you can't remember me cutting your hair.
It was so blindingly good. I just erased it from my memory. But I remember the other guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Nah, apart from that, like, I can't really think of it. I think you smashed it.
Well, I appreciate you coming down, and
Thank
I
you
know
for
how
having
busy
me.
you are.
No, stop, man. It was like for anything creative process, I'm about it. And I'm
Hopefully
really
have
proud of you
back
for
on
like.
again
Yeah,
at some point in the
definitely.
future. We'll hear some like updates and stuff. But if people want to follow you now, how do they find you on social media?
Instagram is right in the nads. Which is a
Literally,
little catchy,
it's not
little
a
catchy
joke.
handle. It's not a joke, no. On my YouTube channel, it's called BENI. So if you just put that in YouTube, you'll see my mug on it. Follow it, subscribe, like all that kind of jazz. If you want some cool travel content that is attached to some sort of meaning. But yeah,
Pretty good. It
Thank
inspires me like massively. Like
Thanks,
I'm
man.
gonna take a little
Likewise.
bit of your style and add it into the barber documentaries
Yo,
for
stop
sure.
it.
I
Yo,
actually
you're-
showed Sam one of your
Yeah?
videos as a reference
No
point
way.
of like
Did
the one with the guy, the street, the food guy.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, and
Incredible.
you're like doing the karaoke. And he's
Yeah.
doing,
No,
oh, it's so good,
Thanks,
man.
man. Appreciate it. That's really kind. But you too, man. Thank you for being a pioneer and like really like showing people how they could use their passion to bridge divides between people who are very different. I think that's so powerful.
I think it's important as well to be, people, finding your why.
Yeah,
That's a great book.
exactly.
Start with why.
Yeah.
Say, what is your why?
Yeah.
Not the what. What's the why? And
Yeah.
then live true to that, and then you'll hopefully be
I actually
happy.
think what we do is very similar.
Yeah.
I think it's just a different medium.
Yeah.
Yours is barbering, mine stories. I just think it's exactly the same thing, just different.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. Yo, smashed it.